Hello, everybody, and welcome to Lewiston Tribune Sports the Lewiston Tribune Sports Podcast, or Lewiston Tribune Podcast, Episode 7. I even stumbled myself up, and I got messed up because of the crew that we have in here. We have the sports staff here to break down the Idaho High School state football playoffs. Starting off with, to my left, the head honcho, the big cheese of the sports department, Mr. Stephen Wiebe. Steph, how are you doing?
Doing great. Good to be here. A little bit different setting. Usually we're doing our show at 1 in the morning on Twitter after our Friday sports slate. And so good to be here in the studio and with the professional here.
Yeah. Make sure you guys tune in to these Tribune Sports After Dark. Obviously, this is going to be going up on Sunday, so you would have missed the most recent chance to watch them, but it's getting towards the tail end of the season. These guys recap all the high-flying action from high school sports around the area on Twitter every single Friday, so you won't want to miss that. But guys, one thing I have missed from being in the sports section has been high school football. And seeing one team do well, I have especially had some pride from, and that is Lewiston High School. Being a Lewiston High graduate and seeing the Bengals make the playoffs always does my heart some good. Lewiston finishes the year 5-4 overall. They average 27 points per game on offense, giving up 23 points per game. Randy, it seems like you have been around the Bengals the most this season, almost like a good luck charm, so to speak. What have you seen from the Bengals this year?
They can't lose when I'm there. So sorry if they lost on Friday because I wasn't there. No, honestly, for Lewiston, they're the most interesting team, I think, out of all the local teams going into a state tournament, just because you never know what team is going to show up. Obviously, Pancari has really put a tough schedule in front of the Bengals this year. They traveled a lot. They played several games in Washington. They went over to Oregon. They have been all over the place. Go out and upset Coeur d'Alene, which was a really big game for them. And then they put some stinkers out there as well. So we'll kind of see where they are. Obviously, it all comes down to kind of Noah Carpenter and his health. I know he got banged up last week, so hopefully they can get going. But they did drop in classification as well, and always was expecting them to kind of have a pretty good run when they were able to do that. So I'm very curious how their state run will go.
Of course, just to kind of recap Lewiston's season here, they won 3 of their final 4 games, but dropped an important one at the end of the season, a 34-14 decision to Lakeland. And Randy mentioned it. They did drop classifications, but they beat Coeur d'Alene and Lake City this season after dropping classification. The last time they did that was in 2022, and it was a first-round exit. And the last time they did it before 2022 was the undefeated 2016 through 17 season. And the result of that, Randy, was also a first-round exit to Rocky Mountain. What do they have to do to beat that trend this year?
Win the game? Yeah. That's about the offense has to be on point. Again, in the games that you see them lose, it feels like it takes them a quarter or a half to kind of get any kind of a groove going, and by then they're in trouble. There's been a lot of times where they have a 0 on the scoreboard at halftime. Luckily, they were able to win one when they did that against Coeur d'Alene. But the offense has to start quick. Obviously, it's a long trip for them down to Twin Falls. But Lewiston has to beat this bugaboo at some point.
Yeah, regardless of the outcome of this season, it's kind of felt like the beginning and the end of an era for Lewiston. They played the final game at Bengal Field and played the first game at the new P1 FCU Sports Complex. You got to see that firsthand. It's a beautiful, beautiful place to play football. So the Bengals, although, depending on what the result's going to be, even if they don't come out on the right end, it has been a successful season, and it does seem like they are on the right track, Randy, as I like to say. Dropping down to another classification, we have the 6th-seeded Moscow Bears, who finished the year 7-2 overall, 2-0 in the Intermountain League. They were your league champions. They averaged 31 points per game on offense, give up 13 points per game on defense. They open up against number 11 American Falls. Steph, I'm going to turn to you for this one. Moscow has been one of the more feel-good stories of the year. I think Lewiston's right up there, but Moscow, seeing them kind of turn around the way that they have has made your heart feel good, I think.
Definitely. Moscow is one of the teams Well, I guess just to set the stage for what they've done, like you said, 7 wins this season. The last 2 years before that, 1 win combined in 2 years in the first 2 years under Coach Rob Baffis. But Moscow stuck with him, and they turned it around this year with now hosting a state playoff game on the day that we're filming or we're recording this here on Friday. So what a turnaround for the Moscow Bears. Slowly kind of building up. You don't see that very often. We're just such a big turnaround. And I was, these days I'm the sports editor, but I covered them a lot over the last several years, and a lot of losses and a lot of just heartbreaking interviews with Rob and his players. And so definitely, like you said, a feel-good story for them. But I think they're hoping for more. I mean, there's no reason they can't win a couple games at the state tournament. Like you said, dropping down to classification, I think has helped. They were one of the smallest schools at the, not to get into all the classifications because it's a little confusing, but one of the smallest schools at the, at the old classification. Now they're still 4A, but
the old 4A.
The old,
the now 5A.
Exactly, new league for them. But just to, maybe get into some of their players. Their quarterback, Noah Velasco, has been around for several years. I remember a couple years ago he was kind of a co-starter. He struggled a little bit, obviously, and this year he's just really found his own as a senior. He's passed for over 200 yards per game, 64% completion percentage. He has 20 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions. He's almost 2,000 yards passing so far this season as of this, with the playoffs still to go. So really came into his own. Cool to see that there, and he has a lot of good targets. One of his favorite receivers, Butch Kiblin, has I believe 10 receiving touchdowns on the year. Again, going into the playoffs, another receiver, Connor Isaacson, leads the way in receptions with 36. But it's more than just these guys. It seems like they really multiple guys that rush the ball, multiple guys playing. Definitely a team effort for these guys, and like you said, a feel-good story for the football area.
Yeah, exactly. And, one more guy to keep an eye on, Keaton Fry, does it all. He does it with as a receiver and as a runner. He has 744 all-purpose yards and 7 touchdowns. Just to kind of give you guys a glimpse into the year Moscow's had, like I said, they won the Intermountain League. They are the 4th best scoring defense in the 4A classification. They started the year out hot, starting 3-0, outscoring their opponents 116-6. After this hot start, they won in an overtime game against crosstown foe Pullman, but then they went on to lose 2 of their next 3, but closed the season with back-to-back league victories. Steph, I kind of just want to focus on just the turnaround. I know you touched on it a little bit there in your last statement there, but Rob Baffis taking this young team 2 years ago. They were a combined 1-15 the last 2 years. They've gone through other athletic adversities. Obviously, Lance Abendroth passing away after battling with cancer. The Moscow, as far as athletics go, has been kind of turning a page. They won state in baseball during the spring. Now the football team kind of has a spring in its step. Just kind of talk about this turnaround for this, not only the program, but the city as well.
Yeah, definitely a bit of a rise in sports. Like you said, a lot of the players that won that, again, a little bit of an underdog run for them in baseball as well. I don't know if people expected them to win the state. I don't think many people did. And a lot of those players are also on the football team. Butch Kiblin being one of them, several of them. Tyson Izzo's on the team here. Several guys that were, we mentioned a lot in the baseball season. But yeah, really turning the page. And, Rob Baffis, I think it just took him a couple years to get going. I know that first year he felt good about it, but I think they were just a little in over their heads. But he's a coach who had a lot of success. He took a little break, but had previously coached at Troy and had a lot of success there. Just took a little time, and they were willing to give him some patience, and he turned it around. But yeah, like you said, definitely a better overall Moscow High School sports-wise than maybe the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Now going into the 2A classification, my favorite type of football in the state of Idaho. I'm talking about 8-man football. And let's start off with the Kendrick Tigers, who have been a dynasty. They've won 3 straight 1A Division II state football championships. They average 58 points per game, and they give up 11 points per game on defense. The offense is the second highest scoring in the classification, and they have the best scoring defense. Sam, I'm going to kick this to you because you got to experience the 8-man football for the first time. You got to experience Kendrick for the first time. And you also got to experience something that nobody else in the sports department got to experience, and that is a Kendrick loss. Although that loss was big, they have had a great season this year. Sam, tell me about the Tigers.
Absolutely. I hope I'm not a bad luck charm. It's just one game, but it's a pretty significant game. They had won, 3 straight state titles. It broke a 31-game win streak that they had, including playoffs, stretching back into 2021. So for the first time in nearly 3 years, almost to the weekend, they lost. And it was, in that game, they lost to Logos, I'm sure we'll touch on in a bit. But Kendrick, they were kind of in control. Yeah. They had a halftime lead. They were really containing Logos quite well. And then, third quarter, second half rolls around, and Logos just, they have 40 guys on their sideline, and that depth and just size of their roster and just competitive nature just speaks to it. But Kendrick, they're still a really good team, as you mentioned. Just that was their lone loss. Sawyer Hewitt, now a senior, has just been tremendous for them and continues to be. In that game, actually, in that Logos game, he had a kickoff return touchdown, so he kind of jolted the Tigers alive, trying to hold on to that. But you just look at that, their roster, quarterback Maddox Kirkland, decent passer, can really feed the ball. That's where the tape really screams well for Kendrick, is just their air game. They're able to really air it out, and they got a bunch of playmakers. They're missing their top wide receiver, who I forgot his name, but they're missing him for that Logos game. And so just when Kendrick is, at its best, and as they have been for the last 3 years and for most of this season, they are still a force to reckon with and still have a shot, definitely, at the state title.
And that is, not a bold take at all. Kendrick has been, the best 8-man team, not only in the state for the last couple of years, but also the country. Just kind of getting into what this Kendrick team is. They're so well coached, and it shows with them, losing a guy like Ty Kep, who was such a great quarterback for them for the last 4 years. But now you got a guy like Sawyer Hewitt, who's taken on a bigger role, Maddox Kirkland. What can you kind of tell me about some of these individual players on this team that have, played a factor in Kendrick's success this season?
Certainly. This senior class, they're not used to as we talked about, they're not used to losing. In terms of their varsity experience, most of them probably starting in their sophomore year, but even if that was the case, they've experienced 1, maybe 2 losses in that span, and so they're not used to that. But I think they're certainly used to bouncing back from adversity, within the spirit of games, and also used to just kind of dominating their opponents. And so that's something I think they'll get. They bounced back and they got to, and I think that's something that we'll see at the state tournament. Sawyer Hewitt, he's played a role, specifically him, he's played a role in their championships. I wasn't obviously around for them, but you can speak to his experience and just how he delivered in each of those big stages. And I think that's something they're used to, and I think it's something that will do again.
Yeah, Kendrick.
Worth mentioning, too, that Sawyer Hewitt's headed to the Vandals, Idaho Vandals, which, not a lot of, it's tough for these 8-man football players to get out and go to a big college, even if they're really good. And so props to Sawyer Hewitt, and props to Coach Eck at the Vandals for keeping an eye on him.
Yeah, unbelievable props to Sawyer Hewitt. Like Sam was saying, he's played a huge factor in, all of Kendrick's state title wins that they've won during this stretch, where they've practically been untouchable in 8-man football play in the state of Idaho. So, props to Sawyer. He's got a D1 football opportunity, and I think the Vandals got a good one in that young man. Let's now talk about Logos and the, I believe, one of the top seeds, if not the top seed, in the 2A classification. This team, man, they have had, one heck of a 4-year rebuild, Randy. What have you seen from the Knights this season?
Yeah, actually, Logos, the 2 seed. As far as the 2A state tournament, the only team ahead of them is Butte County, who won the state title last year and is the only loss for the Knights. But listen, Logos, as you said, has had a fantastic rebuild. Last year they go out and win the White Pine League and make it to the semifinal, and this year they feel like they can take it another step further, and they showed that with kind of taking it to Kendrick. and that was the game we were all waiting for. And in the end, Logos is able to get it. So this is a team, like, it's so fun to listen to other fans or parents from the other White Pine League schools, because there's a little bit of hatred towards Logos just because they're so good.
Yes.
They use other excuses, but it's because they're so good. And that is what Logos kind of goes with. They're kind of the evil empire of the White Pine League, which I think they kind of they like to play up with. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what they are able to do. Obviously, they had a week off for the first round of the playoffs, and we'll see how they go the rest of the way. But listen, 5 teams come out of this White Pine League out of the 12-team tournament, and the 2 top teams are Kendrick and Logos, and I think they've kind of stepped out above the rest. And I know I'm personally rooting for a Logos Kendrick championship game. I know, talking to the Logos coach Nick, what's Nick's last name? Holloway. Thank you. I was blanking. Talking to him the other day, he kind of wishes that they would set up the state tournament where it was North versus South in the opening round game, or the second round games, once they get everything all seeded out, because he's kind of hoping not to just face the same White Pine Team League schools again, but having a Logos Kendrick again or a Logos Butte County again would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, look, you mentioned it. They lost their opener to Butte County. Get this, the Pirates are the only team to beat the Knights in the last 2 seasons. Against other teams that aren't Butte County, they are 17-0. They're currently on an 8-game win streak. They have the 3rd best scoring defense and the 3rd highest scoring offense. Randy, kind of walk me through this here. Who's getting the job done? I know last year when I was covering Logos, covering the Knights, it was everybody getting the job done. The person getting the job done for the Logos Knights was Jack Driscoll, and he was a guy that me and Cody Went would talk about and discuss his quarterback ability and his ability to rush the ball. And Steph, I think a guy that we talked about a lot when we were working together was a guy named Seamus Wilson, and I know he's the quarterback. I'm assuming that he takes some reps and is kind of being a shining star for Logos.
Yeah, so Seamus Wilson didn't even play football last year, and then he comes in and replaces Jack Driscoll, who Driscoll was probably the best player, one of the best, arguably the best player statistically in our area last year. And so you wonder how they're going to replace a guy like that with someone who didn't even play. But it sounds like, again, Holloway's talked about Seamus Wilson. He went to camps. He put a lot of work in, and he's putting up some similar stats with big passing and big rushing numbers. But the thing is he has a lot of weapons out there, and it's a lot of guys that have been around for this program a couple of years now. Several wide receivers, Dominic Poros, Ryan Daniels, Lucius Comis, all guys that he spreads the ball out to. And so we don't mention those guys as much, I think, just because they do spread it out a lot, and there's a lot of different weapons on that team. But that's what makes Logos so dangerous is they do have all these weapons, and it's led to a lot of wins.
Just after a brief look at the Knights stat sheet earlier today, Seamus Wilson has 37 total touchdowns. He has 1,300 passing yards and 731 yards on the ground. Other teams going to the state tournament, qualifying for state, include Grangeville out of the 3A. They went 6-3 overall, 4-0 in league play. They were your Central Idaho League champions. They won 3 out of its last 4 games and lost its final game to 22-6 to fellow top-seeded team Nampa Christian. So, gonna have to be a pretty quick turnaround for Grangeville if they suffered a loss like that to one of the top teams in the classification already. Adams usually loves his offensive line. That's head coach Jeff Adams. And they have an effective run game with a slew of runners that can get the job done there for that team. Also in the 2A, the White Pine League, always well represented. We got Potlatch, who takes on Kendrick. They're 5-4 overall, 3-4 in league. They started the season 5-0 and lost its final 4 games to close the season. Guys, that just so happened to be against the top 4 teams in the White Pine League. What a brutal end to the season that the Loggers had. And then Kamei also in the postseason, the 2A, 6-3 overall, 4-3 in conference play. They'll play Glenn's Ferry. They have the 5th best scoring offense in the 2A. And, they've won their opening round game of state every year that they've been to the tournament since 2003. So it's been over 20 years since KMEI has got to the tournament and lost its opening round game. So history favors the Cubs here in their opening round matchup. Then we have Prairie, who returns to the postseason for the first time under Coach Hasselstrom, who returned under the helm to take over that position. It's the first time they've been back since 21-22. And Hasselstrom, again, was a coach during that season. And during that stretch, they made 9 straight appearances, won 3 titles, and made 4 appearances. What a difference Ryan Hasselstrom has made to the Pirates, guys. And in the 1A, Deary goes to the postseason as well as 4-4 overall, 3-0 in conference play. They will play Cascade in the opening round. They were your 1A White Pine League champions. Guys, I'm going to kick it to you. Any final takes, any bold predictions, any shots you want to call, any championship winners, anything like that? Randy, I'll start with you.
I'm just going to, it's not bold, I guess. Kendrick Logos in the championship game. In 2A, we'll go there. I think that is fair to say. And even though this is coming out after it has officially happened, I'm saying it before, Lewiston gets a playoff win.
They're overdue.
They're overdue. They get one. If they do lose, please edit this out. So I don't look that dumb, please. Yeah. But yeah, Lewiston wins.
Hey, the Bengals are due. Sam, you got anything in the chamber?
I would also take the Kendrick Logos rematch. And honestly, I'm going to try to make a prediction.
Oh, okay. What we got here?
Let's see. So the final was Logos 30, Kendrick 18 in their meeting. I think it's going to be Kendrick 24, Logos 23 in the championship.
That'd be a tight, and that'd be a game for the ages, and I think the fans want that matchup. I think the players want that matchup. I mean, Randy mentioned that Logos is kind of the evil empire of the White Pine League.
I'm a Yankees fan, so it's legit.
Yes, 100%.
So Kendrick will be hungry to get that win back. You'd have a 3-time defending state champions against the evil empire, who is a 4-year program, which almost doesn't really make any sense in the grand scheme of things.
Hey, it doesn't have to make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't.
But I'll just say this: Lapway basketball. I don't know if they still do, but a couple years ago, it used to come out to like Roman Reigns theme.
Yes.
And the bloodline. Like, listen, if Logos just wants to play this new role and come out to the Darth Vader theme and just go full on evil empire, I'm down. Let's do it.
Steph, what about you? Any final takes from you?
Yeah, how about another little shout out to Deary? Deary, a program that was in the shadow of its quote unquote rival for years, that being Kendrick. Kendrick and Deary, very nearby cities. Fans come out to the games, every sport, no matter who they're playing. And obviously on the football side, Kendrick has just utterly dominated that. But Kendrick moves up a classification. And what do you know? Deere comes out and wins the White Pine League 1A in their first opportunity to do so. Congrats to the Mustangs. I'll say. I mean, I bet they're itching to win their first playoff game in a while.
Yeah.
And so, a little shout out to those guys.
Shout out to the Mustangs. Good luck to all the teams competing. Not sure if I said it in the intro or not, but I will repeat it if I did. There are 9 teams in the area competing in the state tournament for football this year. That is the most in the Lewiston Tribune readership since 2018. Thank you guys for tuning in to another edition of the Lewiston Tribune podcast, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.